Hey there and welcome to the channel. My name is Gil and today we're counting down my top 10 favorite films of 2024. Think of this as part 2 of the Gilly Awards, which, if you haven't checked out my Gilly Awards video, I would highly recommend you go watch that. That was the biggest, most ambitious project I've ever worked on the channel, and I really appreciate your views. Whereas that video was more about the technical awards for the year of 2024, this video will be all about my overall thoughts of my favorite films of 2024. So, of all the 60 movies that I watched in theaters this year, which movies stood out? Of course, there was a lot of movies to go through, and some barely missed the cut. So before we get to the list, let's go over some honorable mentions. Civil War, Maxine, Longlegs, Furiosa, and Smile 2. Honestly, it was a major bummer cutting out Longlegs and Smile 2. 2024 was a huge year for horror films, and there were so many to choose from. Unfortunately, they barely missed the cut. And so, with that, let's get into it. Here is number 10, Strange Darling. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to a friend of the show, Rick Maxwell. If it wasn't for his recommendation, Strange Darling wouldn't have even landed on my radar last year. I saw this movie on direct video streaming when Rick told me, hey dude, you got to check out this movie. If you don't like it, I'll Venmo you $20. Just go out and buy it and tell me what you think. Safe to say, I didn't ask him for his money back because I enjoyed this movie so much. This film is amazing. It's basically a cat and mouse thriller about a woman who's being hunted in the woods, and it's told non-linearly, so perspectives change constantly throughout the second and the third act of the film. And what you get in the end is so different from what your expectations were going into the movie that it completely recontextualizes the whole film. I thought the performances were great by Kyle Gallner and, of course, Willa Fitzgerald. She is incredible in this movie. She basically carries the load of the whole film, and especially in that third act, oh boy, what she goes through is nuts. I highly recommend Strange Darling. If you have $15 to $20 to spend on iTunes, I would definitely recommend you checking it out. At number 9, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Sonic has been one of these film franchises that has delivered surprisingly well through each installment. When we first saw the first concept art and trailer of Sonic the Hedgehog 5 years ago, everyone on the internet clowned it. The beady eyes, the human-like teeth. The character just didn't look right, but thankfully, online bullying worked with Paramount, and they changed the model of the character to look like it did in the video games and the cartoon. And what we have had throughout these 3 Sonic the Hedgehog films have gotten progressively better, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is the best of the 3. This movie has a lot of heart, a lot of action, it's really funny, and there's a lot for everyone to enjoy, both kids and adults alike. I didn't expect to love Shadow as much as I did, despite playing Sonic Adventures 2 when I was a kid, but this movie nails that character. And for anyone who was like me growing up as a kid in the 90s that loved Sonic the Hedgehog, how sick was the ending with that Sonic Adventures 2 sequence? These are really solid films for families everywhere, and I could rewatch it a million times. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, without a doubt, was one of my favorites of 2024, and I wasn't expecting that. At number 8, Anora. Anora came onto the scene for me after the Cannes Film Festival, where it took home the Palme d'Or, the best award at the show. Sean Baker has written and directed a wonderful film about a sex worker who falls in love with a Russian oligarch and the hijinks that ensue when they try to annul the marriage. This is a wonderful film about classism, sex workers, and the American dream, and the tolls it takes on the people around them. This is surprisingly one of the funniest films of the year. Think of it as Pretty Woman meets Uncut Gems. That's what this movie felt like. It has an authentic aura around it. Its lighting is perfect. Its cinematography is wonderful. But most importantly, the performances of Yura Borisov and Mikey Madison. There's a reason why these performances are being hailed as the best of the year. Mikey Madison is wonderfully vulnerable while also being strong and really charismatic, while Yura Borisov has become somewhat of a heartthrob among the movie-going circles. I like this movie a lot. It may not be my favorite movie of the year, but I think it's worthy of the accolades. People going into this movie thinking that it is the best movie of the year are going to be disappointed and they're going to label it as overrated. Just go into this movie thinking that you're going to watch Pretty Woman. You're going to have a great time with it. It's really funny, and I think there's a little bit for everyone to enjoy. Except for the kids, because there is nudity here. But yeah, Honora's really great. I think you'll like it. At number 7, Challengers. All right, from here on out, the list gets really tough. Challengers was one of these movies that was high on my list very early on in 2024, and it kind of stuck with me the whole way through. The movie is kinetic. You can feel it in the camera movement, the action, and of course, the score. How the fuck did this not get nominated for Best Original Score? I'm baffled by that. The movie is awesome. It's fun, it's provocative, and it will leave you entertaining. There are great performances here from its young leading cast with Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Feist. This is one of the sexiest movies of the year. It has a lot of analogies and references to this threesome that these people are having and the back and forth that are going on. It's very intriguing, and I think it's one of those movies that got snubbed really hard at the Oscars this year, but is still one of the best movies of the year. And Luca Guadagnino should have also been nominated for Best Director here. This is one of his best films. At number 6, The Substance. There's a stigma with the Academy Awards when it comes to horror films. A lot of movies that do get nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture in the horror genre normally don't win it. But I think this year, The Substance has a real shot. This is a creative and interesting film, tackling the morals of aging superstars as they try to transform themselves to look younger, and how Hollywood treats these older actresses. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley give amazing performances here, and the body horror that's on display will leave you shrieking. I think The Substance is one of these movies that's going to be talked about for years to come as a original and unique idea, deriving from some of the biggest influences from Stanley Kubrick and other filmmakers, but it is its own. Coralie Fargeau managed to make this movie work in every aspect. I really love what she did here, especially with Demi Moore. This is Demi Moore's best acted film, and I hope she wins Best Actress at the Academy Awards. If you haven't seen The Substance, go in with maybe a light stomach, because that final act is truly something to behold. This is a movie that will stick with you long after the credits roll. Number 5, Inside Out 2. Oh, when I said that this list was going to get tough, I meant it. Inside Out 2 was one of those movies that I thought for sure was going to be in my top 3, but it fell down to number 5 after recent rewatches, and there was a couple surprises that came in December. But what I loved about Inside Out 2 is that this movie has a message for everyone, especially given the emotional and political climate that the world is in right now. This is a movie about finding yourself, being okay with anxiety, discovering your sense of self. Also, kudos to Pixar. This was the only movie this year that made me cry in the theater. That scene where Riley discovers her sense of self and says, "I'm not good enough." Dude, that hit hard. Pixar has this magical way of taking abstract ideas and turning them into tangible moments that we could all laugh and cry with on both adults and children's level. This movie is wonderful. It's well thought out, and it's a big return to form for Pixar. And up until recently, it was my favorite animated film of the year. But unfortunately, there is another. Next, we go to my favorite animated film of 2024. Number 4, The Wild Robot. While Inside Out 2 is one of my favorite Pixar movies, I have to give DreamWorks credit. The Wild Robot is my favorite animated film of 2024, and it may be my favorite animated film of theirs. This movie has a lot of heart. It is one of the most beautiful, awe-inspiring, and truly refreshing animated films that I've seen in a while. The Wild Robot is a sprawling adventure about an autonomous robot who learns to find love in a wilderness full of predators and animals. What I found so fascinating about this movie is the different art styles blended together. When the robot's on screen, it looks very digital, but then when you see some of the other effects with the animals, the feathers, the details, the little fibers, it looks like it's hand-drawn. It's a brilliant mesh of two art styles to convey a message about togetherness. If you haven't watched The Wild Robot, it's streaming on Peacock, so if you have 90 minutes to spend, which is a good amount of time to spend on this movie, go watch it. It will definitely tug at your heartstrings. And if it doesn't, well, then maybe you're a robot. But yeah, I hope this movie wins Best Animated Feature Film at the Oscars. It is one that I did not expect to love so much, and it's one of my favorite animated films. Number 3, Wicked. Okay, I might lose my man card for this, but I love Wicked. I can see why there was so much hype for the Broadway musical. The film adaptation is wonderful. It's whimsical. It's beautiful. And I know just a couple minutes ago I said Inside Out 2 made me cry. This was a very close second. There's a really good scene in the middle of the movie where Cynthia Erivo does this interpretive dance on her own, and you can see her emotion in her eyes. That scene also almost got me choked up and crying. It's so powerful. I like the world building that they did with this movie. I can't wait for the second one. This was one of those movies that was up on my list also all year long, and it stayed in the top 3. However, it kept fluctuating between 1, 2, and 3. It couldn't quite settle in at any of those spots. But finally, after December, I made the decision that it is third on the list. The next 2 are movies that I absolutely unequivocally love, and Wicked is right up there with them, so I give them a lot of credit. This was a movie I wasn't expecting to love this much. Plus, this is a movie that I got to bond with my sisters and my niece over. It's that familial connection that I'll always recommend this movie for. I love the discussions that they were having with me, and I can't wait to go watch maybe the second one with them. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, Wicked, it may not have been my favorite movie of the year, but it was in the top 3, which is definitely worthy of note. Number 2, Nosferatu. Like a Randy Orton RKO, Nosferatu came out of nowhere at the end of December for me. I ended up loving this film, and it's because of my love of the wild robot in Nosferatu that Inside Out 2 and Wicked had to take a hike. Nosferatu is one of those films that is so immersive. The way that it's shot, the way that the production design is, the costume design, the acting. And when you go into a Robert Eggers film, you know you're going to get a period piece that's going to be really accurate and meticulously made. This movie breathes this haunting, eerie atmosphere, and you could soak it in every single shot that they have. From the use of the shadows to the creepy faces that Lily Rose Depp does, this is a haunting performance. It's better than any of the previous Nosferatu films, and I do have to say, it is now my favorite Robert Eggers film. I can probably watch this movie over and over again, which is more than I could say about The Northman and the other ones that I liked, but didn't quite love as much as this. I highly recommend Nosferatu. I believe it's also streaming on Peacock. And dude, Bill Skarsgård completely disappears as Count Orlok. I didn't even recognize him under all that makeup. This is another movie that is definitely going to be up there for an Oscar for production design, costume design, and of course makeup and hairstyling. I definitely recommend Nosferatu. And the film of the year goes to Dune Part 2. And of course, my film of the year is Dune Part 2. If you watched the Gilly Awards, you kind of knew this was coming. This movie swept almost every single category that I nominated it for. This is a technical achievement that harkens back to The Empire Strikes Back. This is one of the best science fiction films that I've watched in a very long time, and it's probably the best of its generation. Denis Villeneuve really made a film here that stands on its own while also getting us excited for Dune Messiah. This trilogy of movies has been wonderful to watch, seeing the journey that Paul Atreides has gone on, and for this movie to be the climax, to see him finally get revenge for the death of his father and his house, it was really cathartic. There's a lot of scenes here that I really loved and I wanted to talk about so much in the Gilly Awards. The introduction of Fade Rotha on Gaidi Prime, the Battle of Arrakeen, the first time Paul rides the sandworm. There's so many iconic moments in this movie to indulge in, and what can I say? This movie is a masterpiece in the eyes of a science fiction fan, and I'm one of those guys. I love this movie. I'm kind of bummed out that Denis Villeneuve didn't get a Best Director nomination for this film. It is a travesty. This is one of his best movies he's ever made, and I can watch this movie 100 times. I can never get sick of it. To those of you who didn't watch Dune Part 2 or Dune Part 1, both movies are on Max. Go check them out. This is a series to look out for, especially when Dune Messiah comes out in 2028 or whatever. I love this franchise, and I can't wait to see what happens next. So those were my top 10 movies of 2024. What were your favorite movies of 2024? I know there are some really big movies that were left on the cutting room floor. I'm talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. I know that was everyone's favorite film of last year, but for me, it didn't quite make the cut. I really stand by my list. But sound off in the comment section down below. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say. Also, be on the lookout for my next video. It's going to be the worst movies of 2024. A video that I've been looking forward to for a very long time, and I can't wait to get that out to you. I'm sorry that it took so long to get the Gilly Awards and this movie out. There's been a lot going on in my personal life over the past 2 months, and I'm just glad to finally sit down and be able to provide you with the best of 2024 and finally the worst of 2024. Also, I am going to have a companion review and my Captain America Brave New World review. Stay tuned to the channel so you guys don't miss those reviews. Subscribe and like the video while you're at it as well. I want to thank you all for watching, and as always, go catch a movie.